Hi everyone, today I'm rewatching the TV show Twin Peaks and I'm currently on to season 2 episode 27 called The Path to the Black Lodge, which was directed by Stephen Gyllenhaal and written by Harley Payton and Robert Engels. So the beginning of that episode is kind of comedic when the guys come in trying to take away the giant chess piece with the dead man inside, and they can't pick it up because it's so heavy. Combined with the fact that there is several men and possibly women in hazmat suits that look like something from the future. Then we get this scene, and I don't know why I'm surprised every time I come across this scene, because it's just because it's Willie Garson. I'm like, oh, it's Willie Garson. It's like he has been in tons of things since as long as I can remember watching television. I've seen this guy and he doesn't seem to age either. Maybe in this scene we have a couple of parallels to the pilot episode with Laura, because first of all we pan down onto the face of the deceased person. In Laura's case the face was angelic, and in this case the biker's face was hideously distorted. And then of course we see Andy crying at the crime scene, which is obviously reminiscent of what he did when they found Laura's body. So Dr. Hayward and Ben Horn have a tense conversation about Ben keeping secrets and Ben wanting to expose them. It's quite sad to see Dr. Hayward because he looks heartbroken, and Ben doesn't really have any real inkling of what that means to him, to Doc Hayward. He doesn't really seem to empathize. Ben seems more interested in his own ends, and the concerns of Doc Hayward and Eileen don't seem to matter to him. So we see Donna looking through her personal information and finding her birth certificate hasn't got a father listed on it, and she looks through the photo album of her parents as well and discovers that they used to be old friends with Ben Horn back in the day, and we can put two and two together. I really like the way that scene is staged, with Donna crouching in the dark attic with the whirring fan behind her and the light streaming in from outside. I think it's a very dramatic visual setting for a very dramatic moment, and it really works. So John Justice Wheeler finds out that his partner has been killed and he has to leave, and he and Ben have a heart-to-heart, mostly about business and about Ben's concerns, because Ben feels like he needs John Justice Wheeler in order to be successful in the Stop Ghostwood campaign. I think once again the fact that Ben is seemingly more interested in his own business than the fact that John Justice Wheeler's friend and partner has been killed says a lot about Ben, despite the fact that he is proclaimed to be a good man. So Major Briggs explains that he has been looking at some of the Project Blue Book files in regards to Windom Earl, and he explains that Earl was one of the best men on the project, but when the investigation turned away from outer space and towards the area surrounding Twin Peaks, that Earl became erratic in his behaviour. He became very secretive and started to become violent as well. And then he plays this videotape, and I have to say that every time we get to this moment where Major Briggs plays this tape of Windom Earl, I just find it very sad, because we see Earl on the verge of insanity, not quite fully there yet, I think. He's clearly losing himself, but he's clearly a very intelligent, passionate, valuable member of society who would have had so much to give had he not been affected like he has. And it's kind of a toss-up as to whether he is actually excited about what he's discussing, because he talks about these Dugpes and how they express darkness for the sake of darkness, and his tone is perhaps excited or perhaps extremely concerned. It's hard to tell. Windom describes the Dugpes in a way that is almost indecipherable to other people. You really have to almost slow down that tape to decipher what he's just said, but he seems completely lost in his own world. It's almost like someone who has just discovered the darkest secret on earth, and something so terrifying that they've just lost it. I mean, he can barely actually say the things that he is saying on the tape. He stutters, his voice is shaking, he coughs. He looks like a man who is nervous, terrified. He looks like a man who is on edge, can't deal with, can barely deal with the information that he's found out. At the end of the tape, we see Windom address someone off camera, and he says, "You don't believe me, you think I'm mad, don't you?" Which is more evidence that Windom was well aware of how absurd this might seem to other people. That was probably a strain in itself, to have to accept that you know something like this that is true, but that convincing other people of the truth is something that will be difficult to do. And I think we see at the end of that tape Cooper react a little bit. He looks a little bit sad. So when we go back to a scene with Windom and Leo, we see that confidence in Windom Earle that we didn't see on that tape. He's a different man now. He has clearly embraced the idea of ultimate power, and Windom is pretty derisive about the Project Blue Book and about the men he worked with in the past. He insinuates that he was using them all along to reach this end game and just to propel him on this journey towards ultimate dark power. Okay, so we go to the diner, and the first scene is this woman eating cherry pie whose hand starts to shake. I have been told by other fans that perhaps this is linked to the fact that the lodges are about to open, and it's the influence of that that's affecting everybody. And in regards to that, I was wondering whether it affected people in a good way as well as a bad way. Perhaps Nadine's super strength might be to do with that, and maybe the romantic elements. Cooper and Annie seem to fall in love very quickly. Perhaps we could say that that was a good aspect of that. You know, I mean, there are tons of magical, mysterious events occurring that we could perhaps link to the lodges. I think the handshaking is one of the most obvious signs that something is not right. Something is going on. We see Bobby and Shelley at the diner talking about the speech that Shelley is going to make at the Miss Twin Peaks contest, and I think it's clear that neither of them are academically gifted. I'm going to assume that Bobby got by at school because of his sporting prowess. It feels like it's rounding things up for Bobby and Shelley this scene, because their relationship has been pretty up and down. I always feel that the two of them really love each other, but that Bobby can't quite get it together enough to commit just to Shelley and to commit to what she needs. But in this scene, I do get the feeling that it is kind of ending things for the characters in terms of establishing what their ultimate relationship will be, and that is Bobby saying he's, you know, apologizing for all of the wrongdoing he's done to Shelley. Bobby realizing that what he's done in order to try and get ahead in the world, to try and better himself, was not who he really is, was making him big-headed. And Shelley implies that yes, she knows he's been a different man ever since he hooked up with Ben Horne. Maybe Bobby has been trying to be like Ben Horne so much that some of those attributes wore off on him. But I think in this scene that the veil lifts and Bobby can see who he has been and how that has been hurting his relationship with Shelley and hurting himself as well. And of course, Bobby admits that he was influenced by Gordon Cole and the fact that he was interested in Shelley, and Bobby realised at that point that Shelley was so important to him that he had to change his ways in order to keep her, in order to satisfy her. So we get some more unpleasant scenes with Windom and Leo. It's quite hard to take, even though Leo was so cruel to Shelley in the past. What he's going through with Windom is so terrible that just because he's a human being, you don't want him to suffer that. Get this very absurd scene with Major Briggs walking through the woods, and he touches a tree and seems to connect it to his tattoo. And then we see Windom Earle come out of the woods in a cow costume. I mean, Windom is completely mad in this scene. He is completely mad. I think to combine his evil deeds with such a comic joke just shows how irreverent he is. Cooper goes to the diner and meets Annie, and they have this lengthy conversation which at first seems pretty innocent and happy, but towards the end of their conversation there is a dramatic turn. There is just an overall ominous feeling, and that is affected by the camera pulling out and the dark ominous music. How we see the scene end is Cooper and Annie kissing, but whilst this very scary theme is playing, it's kind of foreshadowing that something terrible is going to happen to this pair, and that is further evinced by the fact that they knock over some plates are covered in tomato sauce which looks like blood, the coffee which also could look like blood, or jumping ahead, the coffee also looks like the oil that is connected to the Black Lodge entrance. So we see Audrey run after John Justice Wheeler, stop him as he's just about to fly away in his jet, and she tells him she loves him, that she wants to make love to him. It does seem a little bit sudden, but it does seem genuine as well, that she would fall for a guy like this with all of his charms and all of his attributes. And then at the end of that scene we see Pete. He's like the third person we see this episode whose hand begins to shake. So Windom Earle interrogates Major Briggs to try and find out more about the map that was found in the Owl Cave. So Dale and Annie have a date together and they go dancing. I think Annie is starting to find her own feet now, because she makes several comments. First of all, when Dale tells her to follow him in the dance, she said, actually, we'll follow each other. And then, you know, giving them kind of equal ground there. And then she says, then he's about to apologize for being a bit too forward, and she grabs him and kisses him and basically commands the situation, tells him that she wants more than just kisses, and comes across as being very forward and very confident, which is quite surprising given that she has previously been quite nervous and she's so new to social interactions as an adult. She then sort of defends herself against the idea of a woman who has come from the convent, who might be perceived as being rather weak. She addresses Cooper in a strange way. She doesn't look at him when she's giving him this speech about don't mistake me for a very soft and frigid and fragile woman. She doesn't look at him until the very last second, which suggests that, yeah, maybe she's putting on a little bit of a front. Then Dale has this vision at the dance when he calls Annie the queen of the Miss Twin Peaks contest. He sees the giant appear again, and the giant seems to have a personal message for Cooper alone in regards to Annie alone as well, because he expresses, the giant just waves his hands and says no. Well, he mouths no. We can't actually hear him speak. Windom intends to kill whoever becomes queen. So I guess that the giant could only be Cooper's personal guide, or else he would warn Cooper in every case of the possibility of Shelley becoming queen and being killed, or Audrey becoming the queen and being killed. Why just Annie, you know? And the only reason that I can think of is because Annie is meaningful to Cooper. So previously we had seen the giant when he was connected to the bellboy at the hotel, and this time that actor is not present, that character is not around. I mean, does that mean that the giant no longer inhabits this old man and he is in fact inhabiting Mayor Milford now? I think these scenes at the end of the episode where the camera pans through empty buildings, they are very scary and cold scenes. There is nobody there. We go through the school at one point. It feels very much like it's a representation of how the whole community is going to be threatened and affected. It all feels very lonely and dark and ominous, and then we cut to the woods. I mean, I think that the shot of the trees blowing in the wind, it feels detached from any kind of human comforts that we might know and understand. There is a lack of warmth there is a lack of stability and safety. There is just a knowable darkness and a world that we don't belong to. Then we see this strange circle on the ground. The circle kind of looks like, you know, if you see a fire that someone has had in the woods and has been extinguished, it leaves like a ring of sort of soot, like grey soot around the edge, and that kind of what that circle looks like. But when the camera zooms in further, we see that the circle is filled with kind of oily substance. In the darkness, a spotlight appears, and beside that we see Bob's arm shoot out of what appears to be a crack in dimensions. Bob seems to be touching the air, feeling something, experiencing something physically, and then he manifests completely, standing at the edge of the circle. He looks like he has an intent. So yeah, I actually feel that this episode, it does go back to how Twin Peaks felt at the beginning of, you know, the whole series. It feels, with the return of Bob being a tangible threat again, and the whole community feeling the effects of Bob's world, that villainry of Bob feels far realer in just that scene of him appearing than Windom Earle the entire episode. I mean, Windom has a disgusting way about him, but being disgusting and terrifying is one thing, but there is always a comedic aspect to his villainry, whereas with Bob, it's complete malice. And you do get that sense as soon as he appears like that, and he seems to be the figurehead for something very evil. Okay, so that is the end of the episode. A very good episode, I think. Come on. A very good episode. Oh, sweetie. And yeah, it feels like we are getting towards the end of the series, and that possibly things... Oh, I got like dog lick on my chin. It feels like we are wrapping up towards the end of the series. This battle between good and evil is coming to a head, and clearly we are headed towards that mysterious world in which we saw Bob emerge. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. You can subscribe to this channel and leave a comment below if you like, and you can also follow me on Twitter at TheLogSadie. And that's it. Thank you. Bye.